world. I'm excited to welcome back a fan favorite to the show and recent recipient of LinkedIn's Transformative Partner of the Year Award at the recent Be to Believe event in New York City. Given to the individual who has been instrumental in transforming the LinkedIn ecosystem over the last year. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the show Colin Day, Oktopost General Manager in EMEA and Vice President of Business Development. Colin Day, are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
Let's do it, Jen. And that's probably the best intro I've ever had on any podcast. And as you can tell, I'm blushing a little bit.
Well, listen, it's quite an award. So congratulations. I know Team Oktopost is always cheering for you, and we've had a lot of exciting buzz around the office. So congratulations on receiving that award.
Jen, I should have brought it with me. Yeah, I could
Where
have
does
brought it
it
with
fit?
me. Where is it?
Yeah.
On the shelf outside.
Ah.
Would you like me to run and get it?
You know what? Stay in the hot seat for a quick second, and maybe we'll do another episode with the award itself.
All right, no problem. That award is very, very heavy, by the way. So, hat off to anyone at LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn must have some kind of, shares in United Airlines because my baggage allowance was mostly taken up by that award. So, thank you to everyone at LinkedIn. In all seriousness, and thank you to Team Oktopost. It really does take a village to get an award like that. So, thank you for the recognition. But really, it's our award. It's not my award.
Thanks, Colin. So listen, I'm going to shift for a moment because there's something that I've been dying to get radically transparent with you about. And it's something that I've seen pop up a few times on LinkedIn as a popular conversation and threads and on Instagram and different circles for those professionals managing social. But it's really about harnessing social intent data for revenue growth. And the reason why I wanted to bring you on the show to talk about it is because I know, and I've heard you speak before, but you've been speaking a lot about these things called, right, social intent signals. And I was curious to understand a little bit more when it comes to social intent, right? How can B2B companies effectively identify and capitalize on social intent signals, whether it's to improve lead generation or customer engagement, or even just to inform their content strategy? Like, what can you guide us in any sort of way to kick off?
Yeah, sure, Jen. Look, I mean, if we strip that right back, right, what is a social intent signal, right? It's like and ultimately, what can we do with it, right? So, look, if I were to ask the audience, right, it's like virtual audience, but if I was asking them to hold up their hands, right, from a B2B perspective, I'm assuming the audience is a B2B organization or someone working for one, right? If I was to ask the audience to, raise their hand, right, if as an organization they used social media in any way, shape, or form for customer engagement, right, everyone would probably put their hand up. Right, we've all got LinkedIn corporate pages and we're all putting content out there. If I ask that same audience to keep their hand up if they as a marketing team regularly posted content on platforms such as LinkedIn for engagement with their audience, large majority of them would keep that hand up, right? Because they've raised it for the first instance. So if they've raised it for the first question, they're certainly going to raise it for the second or keep it raised for the second one. But if they then it's like, if we ask the question about, if they were using any of that content to put out to their employees so that their employees could share it over their personal social networks, you'd start to see, a number of hands coming down right across the audience. And then if you ask them, could you tie, right, those people that have got their hands still raised, can you tie that engagement to ultimately to revenue, right? So could they turn around and say, hey, do you know what, this social post, from this person, let's say it's you, Jen, right? In our instance, right? You put it out on your LinkedIn network, and someone from company ABC went and engaged with it, and company ABC or the person at company ABC or someone at ABC was engaged in a sales cycle with your organization. Could you then tie that social engagement to that opportunity The answer would probably be no. And that's where most B2B organizations fall down, or the trail goes cold. And that really is the nub, right, of the value, the power, right, of a social engagement signal. If I can take that social engagement signal, right, and I can tie it ultimately to a business activity that results in revenue to the organization, I'm then able to demonstrate to the organization the value, of my social channel as part of the modern day marketing mix.
Interesting. So you mentioned, right, in your, example of who would have their hands up when, right? You mentioned advocates or employees rather sharing this, content, and what can marketers do with the social intent signals coming from their fellow employees, which, here at Oktopost, we call it employee advocacy. I think that's the industry standard term that's being used to define when employees go ahead and share that company content. In your opinion, why do you think there's been a shift, right, between the corporate social profile and employees getting involved? And in that shift, right, why is employee advocacy so critical for B2B marketing?
Yeah, so look, number of reasons, right? It's like let's take the simplest one, because I'm a simple guy, as you know, Jen, right? It's like and anyone that knows me knows I'm certainly a simple guy. But look, if we take it in its simplest form, yeah, and this is data that comes out from LinkedIn. Other analysts have different statistics. LinkedIn will tell you that an individual, right, a post that goes out from an individual is 10 times more likely to get someone engaging with it than a post that goes out from a brand. We say at Oktopost, actually, it's 7 times. So if you look at that, right, it's somewhere between 7 to 10 times more likely for someone to engage with a post that goes on a personal profile than something that goes out on the brand corporate page, right? The brand corporate page is amazing, right, for brand awareness, right? But when was the last time you got social, with a brand, right? It was probably, back in the summer of last year. Where did you go? You went to Disney World or somewhere like that, right, Jen? Something crazy. Yeah. What did you do? You must have flown United. Other airlines do exist, right? And the last time you probably got social with a brand was maybe a rant at your airline, because when you turned up at the gate, the plane wasn't ready and it took off 3 hours late, right? So is that a conversation, or is that more of a rant and a monologue rather than a dialogue, right? Is that the way that brands want to to communicate with their customers and prospective customers? Probably not, right? When was the last time, though, Jen, you engaged with a social post, that one of your friends, colleagues, acquaintances, someone you respect in the industry, someone you follow, right? When was the last time you engaged with that? Knowing you, it was probably about 30 seconds ago. It's like just before this show, right?
Absolutely.
So there's one reason, right? Is people are more likely to talk to people. After all, it's called social media, right? So you want to get social, right? That's one thing. The second thing is we all work in B2B, right? And if we think about some of the difference between B2B and B2C, B2B sales cycles, have longer tails to them, right? It's a longer timeline. It's not an impulse purchase, or most of the time it's not an impulse purchase. So I always talk to CMOs, CROs that I'm working with, or indeed like our wider team itself, right, about the 5%, 95% rule. Yeah. So, as we think about the people that we're trying to sell to, the companies that we're trying to sell to, if we look at our total addressable market, right, typically you will see 5% of the market, in market at any given time. So therefore, don't think about those people. Think about the 95%, right? It's like the lion's share that are not. So how do I keep my brand, my message? How do I keep, myself relevant as an organization and as an individual, my personal brand? How do I keep that in front of people so that when they join that 5% club, they remember Colin, they remember Oktopost, they remember employee advocacy, they remember social engagement. It's like how do I keep that relevant? And that's really where having an employee advocacy or social selling program really comes into its own.
Totally. Now, I'm just putting my social media manager hat on for a moment, and I'm hearing everything you're saying, and I'm nodding my head in agreement. But I think one of the biggest challenges we see from any marketing team is this kind of data overload from social media, if you will, where not every like is going to equal revenue. Not every comment is going to bring a sale. So when we're talking about social intent, how do we as marketers, because I think on the big picture, us marketers, we get social intent data, but when it comes to like putting it into action, who's doing it well, or what are you seeing as kind of the ways we can overcome data overload from social and pick out those moments, whether it's from the advocates or from our corporate profiles, but from those meaningful conversations to say, yes, social played a role in driving revenue here or driving growth.
Jen, I'd actually disagree with you, probably for the first time in my life, right? It's like on that, it's like with regards to data overload, because what I would say is that it's probably a little bit underwhelming rather than overwhelming, right? Because if you look at a lot of the social media managers that we start talking to, right? They don't necessarily know the art of the possible, right? They don't know what can be achieved with social engagement data because we've been conditioned, that for organic social, the only thing we can get to, right, is the number of likes, the number of comments. Yes, like what I would class as great brand metrics. Yeah, but don't do anything. Yeah, if I put my sales hat on, right, as a CRO, doesn't do anything to help me understand, what my friends in marketing are doing in order to, give me better, qualified leads, right, and to get me that alignment, between the sales and marketing process. So, what I would, the way that I would really answer your question would be, if we think about what social is a channel, right? And that channel is divided into a number of different pipes or swim lanes. You've got paid, you've got organic. With inside organic, you've got owned and you've got earned, right? The corporate channel versus the employee or advocacy channel, right? So for me, it's a case of how do I first of all get my hands on details around that first party engagement, right? Who's engaging with the content that I'm putting out there, right? What content are they engaging with? Yeah, what are the types of engagements that they're having? Is it comments? Is it reactions? If it's comments, what's the sentiment of that comment, right? What campaign does it relate to? If I've got that information and I'm able to put it into the likes of my marketing automation, my CRM, my CDP systems, right? And I can then put it into the hands of the right person within inside the organization that can interpret that information and drive a business outcome off the back of it, then I've done my job. But that's not necessarily the way that I've been conditioned as a social media manager, but it certainly is the way that I've been conditioned as a CMO, or as a director or VP of social strategy or marketing operations, right? So it all depends on who you're having that conversation with, Jen.
Touche. So listen, in that answer, what do you think B2B brands then need to know to bridge that gap, as you mentioned, right, between social media engagement, which is where the social media manager sits, and revenue generation, which is that CMO or CRO hat?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a case of understanding what the art of the possible is, right? So don't think about social as a black box, right? Don't think about social as a standalone channel. Think about social in exactly the same way as you think about the website, right? As you think about email, right? It's like as you think about events, physical or virtual, right? Social is just another channel. Yeah, and what you can get from those other channels, you can get from social, right? And if you know that, then it's how do I build that into my integrated campaign strategy.
That makes sense. I think what's interesting about what you are sharing, right, is when we think about social as a channel, just like we would a website or wherever else we would communicate, there are rules of engagement, if you will, or best practices, or things that are very common that everybody should know. So when it comes to social, and I'm going to specifically call out LinkedIn, I don't know if you can share if it's, but LinkedIn algorithms, right? What
Wow.
are, right? Yeah,
What a
wow.
topic. What a topic. Yeah. That's like, you know, the Wizard of Oz, and all of a sudden you're asking the audience to come behind the green curtain with me, Jen.
Yeah, right. So we don't know much, right, about the mysterious LinkedIn ways of algorithms, but can you share some of the latest changes in LinkedIn's algorithm and maybe how B2B marketers might be able to adapt their strategies in order to stay relevant as a modern marketer?
Yeah, look, some of it's simple, right, Jen? Some of it, we go back to that simple guy analogy again, right? But some of it's simple, right? So, if the audience were to adopt, some of the tools and strategies that we've been talking about, right? Whether it be Oktopost or something else, right? It's like, they may or may not have those tools. They may or may not have the maturity to take them. They may not have the budget, right? But they may have, right? But let's set that aside, right? So, if we think about some of the strategies that they could deploy anyway, right? To truly get engagement and conversion, right? The communication that goes out through social needs to be authentic,
Mhm.
right? And needs to bring real value, right? So posting content that truly resonates with one's audience, right, is what's going to drive that engagement. Yeah, authentic engagement is rewarded by LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn will then enhance the visibility of that content. So if it sees engagement, and it sees engagement in 2 points, right, early on, right, and we always talk about, it's almost like my daughter's a murder detective, right? Or she's a detective and just happens to deal with the odd murder. But if you watch, CSI or one of those, programs others do exist on TV, they always talk about a murder being, the first 24 hours is the most important, right? From a social media perspective, yeah, the first couple of hours, right, is the most important, right? If you can get engagement in that first couple of hours, yeah, LinkedIn will reward that, yeah, and boost, yeah, the visibility of that post, right? The other place is long-term engagement, right? If that piece of content gets engagement over a longer period of time, yeah, then again, it's another way for the post to be boosted.
So it's interesting because thinking back to what you were saying about social intent data, right? So what comes to mind is right what you just said, right? It's the first 24 hours are extremely important. And I think it's interesting because social media, social intent, that's in real time, right? It's happening as your post goes live. Social is very fast moving, right? So thinking back to how to use this social intent data, I almost would say you have kind of two forms, just like you mentioned, with the algorithms, how to play nicely, the authentic engagement, right? So if you have 24 hours, let's say, to go ahead and in a few hours engage with that post, and that is coming in real time, those are interesting social intent data pieces you're going to want to look at. What are those comments? What is your community saying? What is your audience saying? What are those comments? But then from a long-term perspective, understanding those social intent pieces into like a broader story or trying to understand a pattern or if there is any sort of pattern, I think that's really valuable to think about social intent data in that way. Thoughts on connecting the two? Is that something that you do when you look at those
I,
social
I'd
points?
add one other piece to that as well, though, Jen. Right? It's like it's about consistency and frequency,
Okay.
right? And sharing regular, high quality content that's relevant to the brand is also a key thing, right? It's like because that plays into the 5%, 95% that we mentioned earlier, right? That 5% of the addressable market is only in market at any given time, and don't forget the 95%. Right, because that's what's keeping you, forefront of the mind and relevant, right? So frequency and consistency are two things that I would also encourage people to think about.
So listen, I have two more questions for you. The second to last question, I'm interested to pick your brain about future trends because I think social intent data is a big one that we're going to be seeing, today, tomorrow, years to come, as we get more advanced with how social can really contribute to growth. But what other emerging trends are you seeing in the B2B social media space, and how should we prepare for them?
Yeah, and Jen, when we talk about advocacy, right? Sometimes we'll talk about social selling and social selling strategies, right? Why is it called social selling? Yeah, isn't it just selling, right? It's like today, if we look at the number one network, I mean, we've already mentioned it, right? LinkedIn, number one network for where a lot of B2B people hang out, and probably it's like the vast majority, if not 100% of the audience that's listening to this podcast, right? They all have a personal presence on LinkedIn, right? So as we think about the role of the modern day marketer and modern day sales professional, it's no different to our grandparents, our great grandparents, the old man or the old lady that used to go door to door, so like selling Avon or selling like home utensils, right? Exactly the same thing. They had to build an audience and a following. We need to build an audience and a following, right? And that's where that relevance, consistency, persistency, and authenticity comes into it, because people buy from people and people buy from people they like, right? So, as we talk about, some of the trends, right? It's like, look, social's grown. I mean, it's like social's a relatively new channel. Yeah, it's certainly newer than physical mail, right? Although that seems to be going through a renaissance and coming back at the moment,
Yeah.
right? In some regard, but it's a relatively new channel, right? If you go back, 25 years, right? You go back to the start of my career, which I'm a 50-plus-year-old male, and I started, working for a bank. It's like, before I turned 20. If you go back then, there was no such thing as social. I didn't even have a mobile phone with my first job. I had a pager, right? So, in that regards, social is a very, very new channel, right? To organizations, and some industries are, laggards to others. Yeah, certainly in the regulated space, right? There's a little bit of catching up that may need to be done there. So the one thing I can say about social as a channel is it's evolving rapidly. It will continue to evolve as digital transformation continues to take hold in certain industries. And as individuals and as organizations, we're continuously learning, right? And we're continuously adapting. It's one thing that Homo sapiens are very good at, right? So, some of the strategies that we've discussed today, it's just the beginning of what's possible, right? It's the beginning. But for so many people, some of the stuff that we've spoken about today, Jen, I'm sure is new to them, right? They hadn't been thinking that way, and hopefully, with some of the takeaways from today's conversation, we've got a few people thinking about social in a different way.
Absolutely. So listen, now that we're all thinking about social in a different way, let's think about Colin Day in a different way. My final question, um, you have quite an impressive background. I've done my due diligence.
You've known me for far too long,
I've
Jen.
known you for a long time. I know your LinkedIn profile inside and out. What is something that you can tell us about yourself? We know that you've won a quite prestigious award. We know your daughter is a detective. What's something that you can tell us that we can't learn about you from
There's only one child, and we're not allowed favorites, Jen. So I do have three others, right? It's like, so that my children range from the age of 28 down to 18, and that daughter is child number two. Child number one, made me a grandfather a couple of months.
Oh,
Not on
congratulations.
my LinkedIn profile, but it's so nice to welcome the next generation, right? But doesn't half make you feel old.
Oh,
You can give them back at the end of the day, and They're not necessarily your expense, they're someone else's expense. But that's something about me, Jen, that's not on my my social profile. My wife and I have just become grandparents.
Congratulations. That's wonderful, amazing, beautiful news. In terms of social intent, thanks for getting radically transparent with me today, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Jen, thanks for having me, and hopefully we've left something with the audience.